Hello, everybody. So this has been a crazy day for all of us, so bear with us. We are speaking to you probably right before dinner for some of you all, but maybe during dinner or right after. I haven't had mine yet, so mine is like sitting next to me. So whenever I'm off camera, y'all can just imagine me chewing or something. I don't know. But anyway, I am so excited to have Carol Mitchell here with us. You have seen her before. If you've been in person to any of the events for years, she's been doing the Nancy Festival with us and bringing all of her wonderful children's books. Um, Talked to us about what it's like to be an author, brought some of her own authors on for the book club because she also publishes books. And but now, today, we are talking about her debut adult novel. So, how do you feel? I'm going to do your full intro in a second, but how do you feel about that? Like, I know I'm super excited for you to be jumping into this new thing, but how do you feel?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Ava. It's always great to see you. And I have to say,
Yes.
you're looking younger every time. And this is not like, this is
Oh,
seriously.
I will take it. I will take it. It's just the gray that gives it away. But, I
Didn't even
don't have a
notice.
skincare routine.
Did not even notice it. But yeah, I'm really excited to have this book out. It's been a work in progress for a long time, 5 years, and just to see it out there, I'm so excited. I'm so happy with the way it turned out. First of all, looks amazing. I love the cover, I love the title, and the reviews have been amazing. And so it really has been quite a wonderful journey, and I'm very excited to finally get it out into the world September 19th and have people read it and hopefully enjoy it.
So you are really accomplished, right? Teach you teach people how to do this. What is it like doing it for yourself? Like kind of trying to take your own advice. I know that it's hard for me. My mom says, "Do so, no like so." Right. So you tell people you got to do this and make sure you do that, and you're real critical of everybody else. But then when it's your turn, it's like I can get away with it if if I do this or if I take this shortcut. What has it been like trying to kind of wrangle yourself, or do you have a community? I know Narissa is like your big champion. Do you have like a community that says, "Girl, I need you to do these things and do this," or where they read your writing, they're like, "You know better. You can't skip this." Tell me about what it's like to try to kind of police yourself.
Yeah, I actually haven't found that much of a problem. So I do have a great community who, reads my work and reads it thoughtfully and gives me critical feedback, which is amazing. I usually tell people, usually you're not really a good editor of your own work. But I think I do a half decent job, probably in part because I teach. And so I do listen to myself and I do listen to the things that I tell my students and also to what I've been told over the years and try to incorporate that into what I'm writing. So I mean I always am open to advice and to suggestions, but I think I'm my worst critic. Like I'll write a short story and then 2 weeks later I'll be like, nope, never looking at that again. I thought it was amazing. Now I look at it, nope, it doesn't have any emotional center. It's just flat. So out the door. So and sometimes I think that's to my detriment, but yeah, I'm definitely I'm hardest on myself, much harder on myself than I am on any of my students or anything like that.
So I know they're gonna if they end up watching this, they're gonna be like, "Really, really, you're harder on us, really." So you better publish my book then. How about that? I love it. I love it. So, how did you end up building this community? I know you've been writing and publishing for years and years. How did you end up building this community that would, bolster your confidence to go into a new genre? How did you end up putting all of these people in place?
Yeah, I think it's so important to give. And I was talking to someone recently, and I think that like what you put out into the world is what you get back. And I like to think of myself as someone who really enjoys supporting other people. And so if I see you doing good work and I'm like, hey, there's that connection I think would be great for you. Why don't you talk to this person? Why don't you send it to that person? And that comes back to me. tenfold. And just so I started writing in 2006, and you mentioned Narissa. Narissa is one of the people who encouraged me from the very beginning.
Yes.
And, that's kind of how I got my start. And since then, I have kind of just put myself out there into the Caribbean writing community. And it's so supportive. There's so many people doing amazing work and willing to, a lot of people who reviewed my book, I haven't met them. Elizabeth Nunez, I've never met them. Clavis and Tara, I've met her once or twice. These are people I just kind of put on my big girl panties and said, okay, I'm just gonna ask. And they came
Yes.
through for me and did it. So that kind of support that exists in the community, if you reach out and give into it, you put into it, and then you'll receive as well.
And you definitely do that. Like, my husband was like, "Who is this again?" I'm like, "Okay." So when we were setting up for the Anansi Festival, the very first one, she was there. The very last one we did, she was there. You know, you've shared so many opportunities with me, and it's wonderful to see you just keep going and have all of these people behind you and have people see how wonderful we think you are. You've been kind of hanging with Soka Mom for what? Gosh, probably the
It's
whole 10 years at this point, so
been
it's
10
really,
years?
really beautiful. It's been, I think we're at 12 now, actually. It's been a
Okay.
minute, but
Congratulations. That's great.
I haven't done one of these in a long time. And when I posted it, people were like, wait, what? You're gonna be on camera? What's going on? And I was like, listen, there's some people that will get you out of the woodwork. So here we
I
are, and
really
really
appreciate it.
I'm
Yeah.
so happy to be here. And I know why you're getting the great reviews. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. There was so much that mirrored my experience, my parents' experience, coming to the US from Trinidad. It's something that so many people can relate to, even if they're not from the Caribbean or they don't have Caribbean roots. But if you do, there are so many little Easter eggs that'll make you be like, oh, she wrote that for me. So let's talk about some of those. Okay. So,
Okay.
first of all, what was your favorite part of the book to write?
Oh my gosh. So I would have to say there's a character, and I think maybe if I go out on a limb, that might be one of the characters that you might have connected with, is Jamela, who's the main character's best friend. And she's first generation American. She's born here. Her parents are, one's from Trinidad, one is from Panama. And is kind of she sort of bridges the Caribbean American experience, and she's kind of fun. And I really enjoyed writing about her, and with her interactions and conversations. And there was more of her in the book, but that didn't make it into the final cut. But she was one of my favorite characters. And then in the original version of it, that well, there have been many iterations of this novel, and one of the original versions of it did not have the very end. When I can say this, it's not. It'll be a spoiler, but it's not a terrible spoiler. Amaya actually goes to Jamaica, and I hadn't included her doing that. And then I had a very close relative of mine pass away, and I went to Jamaica for the funeral. And I kind of realized at that point that this is what was missing. And so writing that was a lot of fun as well. Just reimagining my experiences in Jamaica. I mean, this is by no means autobiographical. There's none of me in the book, but just just that you see, I guess, through my eyes and the way that I saw things on that visit and remembered from previous visits. So I think Jamela and the writing the Jamaica section were probably two of my favorite parts. I can't hear you though.
Was one line, and I was trying to find it while you were full screen. There was one line that I loved, and it was when she first met her best friend, who was going to end up being her best friend, and they were sitting on the bench. And she, I guess she noticed her accent, and she goes, you know, my mother's a Trini. And she's like, wait a minute, wait, and it made her feel comfortable all of a sudden to just kind of open up. And that
Mhm.
is a feeling that a lot, like my kids get that, and they're, you know, me, and then my husband is American, but they get that same feeling when they hear an accent. They're like, wait a minute. They may not know a thing about them, but they're like, they must be special. I'm sure they're really nice. And I'm like, oh, I don't think you can decide that off of an accent, but okay. But that it gives them kind of like a comfort. It's a comfortable feeling, right?
For sure.
It yeah. So I really, really loved that particular part. And then something else she said about when she was growing up in her house, she was in Trinidad if she was in her house.
Right.
And that's definitely something that really Sokamam was built on, that feeling that a lot of us have when you come to the United States or your parents raise you in the US. It's like, you can go to McDonald's and stuff when you're outside of that house. But when you're in this house, this is what we eat, this is what we listen to, this is how we speak
How we
to each
behave.
other, how we
Mhm.
behave, and the words that you use, things like that. It's a completely different world when you get into the house. Would you say, what part of your experience, because I know it's not you, but what part of your experience kind of mirrors that? Like when you meet people, do you automatically warm up to them when you hear that little Caribbean lilt in their voice and you really want to ask them where they're from, or you just want to talk to them? Do you feel that connection?
A little bit for sure. I actually had a really interesting experience recently. I was leaving class. I just finished teaching and I stepped outside and there was a woman sitting on the step and she had on this green dress and it was so gorgeous on her. And I walked past her and I said no. And I stopped and I turned around and I said to her, "Green is your color. Like you need to wear that. It looks so beautiful on you." And then she heard my accent and she's like, "Oh my gosh, where are you from?" And I think we're going to be good friends. So I think that we're always as humans looking for connections, and I'm sure it happens with people from all different parts of life. Anyone who's come from, whether you've come from another country to the US and you meet someone of the same, from the same place, the same area, who has similar experiences, or if you're coming from another part of the US, where we live in, where I live in Virginia, DC, is a very transient community. And
Yes.
so I think a lot of people connect to the story, even if they're not from another country, because they're from
Yes.
another place. And when you meet someone who has a Bostonian accent, and it's like,
Yes.
I'm from Boston, or however you say, I can't say it, but um, but you feel that you can share these lived experiences and you can connect with them in a way that is a little more challenging to connect with other people. Not that you can't. I mean, you can have amazing friends. I have amazing friends who from the US and other places, but there's just something special there.
And
That
that's why I felt like pretty much everybody can relate to the story, because I remember I had taken my son to a car show in New York, and we got kind of turned around in downtown, and I saw a guy, his wife, older gentleman. He had on khaki pants and a blue blazer, and I'm like, I know that uniform. That is someone from Georgia. Guaranteed. I knew it. And I said, I know that I can ask them for directions. And even if they don't know, they will at least be kind to us. And we let them get out of the crosswalk. And I think it freaked him out a little bit. Like, you know how in New York people will like do little magic tricks and stuff. That I was like, "You're from Georgia, aren't you? Either Augusta or Atlanta." And he's like, "Yeah, that was weird. But yeah." But I see how we all kind of search for a connection somewhere, something that can, start a conversation, or just even simple things like to get somebody to smile, a little smile, something like that. If you see somebody with their bandana on or their flag on their car or something like that, you just pull up and you give them a little smile, a little, little connection. I love that. So the theme of connection just kind of runs all the way through the novel. What is it that when you're teaching somebody, right? You're teaching somebody, how do you get them to keep a theme like that going? how do you get them to, or teach them to not kind of veer off into five, six different things? Because we all, people who write, that's what you want to do. You're like, oh, I thought about this thing. Let me add this in there. And you said there were several iterations of this. How did you manage to keep yourself on track, and how do you keep your students on track?
Well, I think what I say to my students, and I try to do for myself as well, is that you got to get the work down on paper. Okay, so you write, and then it's the editing process when you work through all of that. People talk about, oh, there's this theme in the book, or a lot of times authors don't go in, or I think some of the best books, the authors don't go in thinking about, oh, I wanted to have this message or that message, because then you come up with something that's a little didactic. If you focus on the stories and the characters and kind of the heart of that story, then afterwards in the editing process, you can decide, okay, well, this doesn't quite fit in. This is a little extra, because there's a lot of stuff on the cutting floor from this book. And I've actually thought about publishing little bits of it. There are other experiences that Amaya has that were written in a lot more in Trinidad, that didn't make it in. And but you have to and then that's where having a good editor also helps. I had an amazing editor through my publisher, Central Avenue Publishing, and she would be like, oh, Carol, this here doesn't quite, what is this saying, how is this adding, how is it
Oh,
moving Amaya forward, why do we need to know this, maybe it can go because
yeah,
it was a
that is
lot
the
on
big
the book.
question. How is it moving the story? I just thought it was fun. Nope, but is it moving the story somewhere? Is it going anywhere? So,
Yeah, yeah. And it's sad. It makes me sad, but
because you've created these characters and they're full and they're round, and you want to give, you want to get people to know them. And you're like, I might want to talk about how, something that's not exactly moving her anywhere, but it's just interesting. So I have a question that uh, I know we were going to talk about parenting, because this book has a lot in it about parenting.
Right. Mhm.
Um, so it was on page 65. Memories are a funny thing. They're fragile and inconsistent. We forget events, then we rebuild them. Something like how paleontologists rebuild dinosaurs they've never seen in their shape and size using found bones, footprints, fossils, and so on. When it comes to memory, the mind uses items like photographs, mementos, and stories we hear. Sometimes the creatures we build closely resemble reality. Sometimes. Now, for this, it made me think about how our kids and our parents, a lot of the times, will relay their memories to us, and we're going, that doesn't seem exactly how that happened. And sometimes when we're talking to our parents, they're adamant that this is how you grew up and this is what your experience was. But you want to give that pushback, but your memories are just as, you know, fragmented and filled in as theirs are. So is there something that struck you about the memory part of this, the memory part of the story, that made you say, this is going to strike a chord with my readers? This is a message that they're going to feel. Because I felt that. Because my kids come to me and they're like, remember that time? And I'm like, girl, no, that doesn't even sound like me. That doesn't sound like, but I've also built a memory of myself that is quite different from what my kids come up with. So tell me how that kind of, worked into how you moved this story forward with memory being a main theme.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is what you were talking about. I'm no longer 20. My memory is not what it used to be. And sometimes it scares me. It really does. And I've had a number of people around me go through this whole process of Alzheimer's, and that's what Aunt Marjorie is dealing with. But I also wanted to look at this other side of memory and the way that we do recreate things in our minds, and sometimes two people can have such different memories and be of an incident and be quite sure that this is the way that it happened. Like, for example, for years I told people that I was in the UK in the winter, and I had memories of snow in the winter and that sort of thing. And then my parents were like, no, that picture of you in a jacket was just because it was a little chilly, and we were just, being from the Caribbean, being sort of overprotective. But you really would not in the UK. It was summer. You were not in the UK
It
in
was
November.
windy, girl. It was not snowing.
Right. But I built this whole memory and convinced people of it because I had just, seen this one photo and extrapolated forward. And so I think we do that a lot, and a lot more than we recognize. I was reading something recently, and the person said memory is fiction. It
Yes.
really is. And so when we talk about what we remember, we have to really be careful and be cognizant of that fact. And it leads to so many issues when you think about it. So many conflicts are a result of people remembering things differently, because we remember so much more than with our eyes and our ears, but we remember with our hearts and what we felt, and that emotion. Sometimes we build on it just as we would build on a photo. You build
Yes.
on that emotion to 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 say, okay, this is the way he looked at me. He looked at me in this angry manner, and he'll be like, no, I didn't look at you angrily at all. I'm like, well, I felt that, so you must have done it. So it's really, I just thought about that a lot. And as I said, the experiences I was having with people around me, with, being concerned about my own memory, and led me sort of down this journey of what if, you just lost everything and rebuilt these fake memories. And then it came back, like it started to uncover, and you found you were not quite the person that you thought you that you had created, and that you thought you were.
And I think that's really important to think about when you have a history that you're not necessarily immersed in. So like if you don't grow up around your family, I there would be 20-year gaps between when I would see a lot of my family that lived in Trinidad. So, I could see where I fill in those relationships and fill in those feelings. And you take that summer that you're there and fill that in with this full relationship that you feel like you have. And then you see them 20 years later and they're like, um, yeah, you came and visited. I don't know. We're not besties. Calm down. That memory theme was really, really moving for me because, like you said, it starts a lot of conflicts with your family, and you're talking to your parents and you want them to apologize for things, or your kids want you to apologize for things, and you filled in this nice rosy picture of things, or your parents have filled in these memories with other things, or with the person that you are now. And it really kind of, like you said, it can cause a lot of conflict. So I really love how this book is kind of empathetic towards memory and what you lose and what you find. I really, really, really love that. So when you were writing some of the more technical parts of it, things that you needed to do research and things like that, is that where the 5 years came in? I need to know, for
Why
those
it
of
took
us who want
5
to write our own novels, do we need to plan 5 years out? Like, tell me what it was.
There has to be an easier way. There has to be an easier way. I think for me, because the the work is completely fiction, as all of my work is, but some of my short stories, they have a little bit more of me, or they're based on something that I experience. But this was so just totally separate and outside of me that at times I would be completely stuck. There were times when I didn't like it at all, and I put it down for several months. And there was a point when I said, okay, this is going to be in a box under my bed. And when I died, somebody's going to find it and said, oh, what's this? Oh, so that's
Oh
really
no, in a
some of
box
that
under
time
the
was some of that time was trying to find an agent,
bed.
which I eventually did. So it wasn't 5 years of writing for
Ah,
sure,
okay.
but lots of revision. And as I said, just reworking and rethinking and that I think it took me a while to get to what, like, as I, that like emotional core of the story, and what I was really what I really wanted people to take away from it. And it took me a while to get from, you can write a story that's interesting, the plot, and this is very heavily plotted. That's the other thing that took a while because there's a lot of moving around and reorganizing. But you can write that really plot, a story with a great plot. But if there isn't something that, people are going to connect to, and you don't understand what that is, then it's not going to quite work. And I think it took me a while to get to that point where I really loved it and understood what I was trying to say.
So
So
what was that feeling at the very, very beginning when you get the first burst, like the first idea, that feeling versus the book is in your hand, it is everything that you wanted it to be. What are those two feelings like? And you told us about the 5 years in between, but what are those two feelings like?
I think for me, it's a journey. So in the beginning, this book actually started out with the son Taiwo. I wrote a short story about him, and then I found myself more interested in his mother. Um, and then I did what one of my professors has told me, like when you have a story, throw in another character. And so I throw in another character. I won't say who that is. And so the story just kind of built from there. But I've always been in love with Amaya. Like she's always been this person in my head who is so much like so many mothers. She wants to do for herself, but she's really invested and loves her son. So there's this little bit of a of a tussle that's going on in her heart, where she has a son who she's going to be taking care of for a long time. He's not moving out at 18. He's not moving out at 21. And so she has to find a way to find herself in that. And that part of finding herself is uncovering all these memories. So she's walking around, and then she's also taking care of her aunt. So she's walking around looking like, oh, everything is fine, but her life is just so caught up in taking care of all of these other people that she is really struggling to find who she is in this whole picture. And so to see that her story is now out and complete, and to have figured out where she needed to be and where she needed to end up for the story arc to be complete, it feels really great. I mean, the publishing of the book is fine, but figuring that out was really, I think, the crux for me. I was in a writing retreat, and when I kind of really that came together, and I was able to get that final push, and to get her to that final scene, where she ends up, which I can't say because I don't want the spoilers, but yeah. So I think that for me was where the journey sort of ended, and the fact that it's out in this beautiful book is wonderful. Really excited and happy, but just completing the arc was enough in a way for me. I read somebody recently who was saying that you got to love the writing. The publishing is great, but you really have to love the writing, and otherwise it just doesn't quite work. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I know that doesn't make any sense financially because you could write and never publish, and you've had to do something else. But yeah, it's
But you can tell when somebody really loves what they do because listen, 18 books later, okay, I really feel like this might be your thing,
maybe
right?
maybe.
Possibly, maybe. So speaking of the publishing part of it, you have published with others and published for others, right? You've done, but what was this experience like? This is a different imprint that you're working with. What was this experience like that was different? Because you are obviously very happy, right? You're very happy with how this came out, and the rest of us are too. I cannot wait for the 19th. So because I've read it, but I want to put it on my bookshelf and hold it in my hands. So I love seeing
Thank
books by people that I
you.
know on my bookshelf. But how is that experience different, and what has you kind of smiling like this? I love it.
So it has been a different. So I first of all, I struggled a little bit with the deciding where to go. There's a part of me that wanted a big publisher, that wanted to hold out for that, but in the end, I was convinced that it's maybe better to be a big fish at a small publisher than kind of swimming with 2,000 other fishes in the with a big publisher. That said, if a big publisher came to me, not that I'm going to say no, I'm not saying that, but but in
I'm
terms of
just
holding out
saying.
for that, I had this offer, and it has been a really great experience. Central Avenue Publishing, they're based in Canada. Michelle Halkett is the owner, and she has just championed this book. She loves the story. She has put her efforts, her money. When I was going back and forth over the title, oh my gosh, what a drama. I keep telling her, I know you were in your house saying this woman is driving me insane, but I never felt that. I always felt like, okay, no problem. We'll change it again. No longer matches the cover. We'll change the cover again. We went through some iterations. I remember there was one title we had, and it was Thanksgiving here, and one of my girlfriends who's read the book, she was one of my first readers, Leslie Casa, and I told her the title, and she was like, Carol.
And we all know that's kind of like what we see on TikTok now when they're like, girl, girl. Like there's a whole bunch of,
Yeah,
we
that
all
was
know that.
a good one.
We all
And
know
so
that sound.
the next day I was on the phone, like, I'm so sorry, but we have to go back to the drawing board. And it's funny because this title, What's That Bad in Morning, was one of my first choices. And I hesitated because every time, and still happens, every time I have to tell somebody what it is, I have to explain it. And I didn't want that necessarily, but here it is, here we are, and I'm really happy with it. I'm happy with the cover. I love the way the interior came out. I loved working with the editors that Michelle put me to work with, who work for Central Avenue Publishing. They were so just very understanding of the story and what I was trying to do. I know sometimes people struggle because a publisher wants them to change the language in it, or things make it more American or whatever. I got none of that. I was actually encouraged to really do more. Got notes when we went from the I'm going to say major editing, because the correct phrase is has slipped me, to the line editing. That we sent notes like, these are purposeful misspellings and things like that, so that they wouldn't try to correct the dialect in it. So, and they were fully supportive. It was beautiful. And then they'd come back, and I was like, oh, can you change my bio with this? And then they've really invested in me as an author, and so I'm very happy with the experience. They do a lot of poetry, so I'm not sure, but it has been an amazing experience with them. And they distribute through IPG, and I know IPG is very happy with the work that they're putting out as well. So, and I got a book list review that I can't
Yes.
share, but it's very positive, and I'm very excited. And so I can't wait in the middle of September to talk about that as well.
Well, make sure you all are following Right with Carol on Instagram so that you will be able to hear, you know, all of the wonderful reviews that come out after, because, sometimes there's embargoes in different places. So make sure you're following so you can see all of the praise that comes up. Now, when we first started talking about, your journey and all of that, we talked about your village, and they are here. So we want to give them a shout out here. Narissa, she said, "Hey, beautiful people."
I
She's
know.
one of the most fabulous people that I know. So it feels good for her to call us beautiful. Um, you have, let's see, Gina, she's Jeannie or Jean
Oh, hi,
McPhillips.
Tracy. She's a
Yes.
friend. That's great.
Yes,
Thank you.
your crew is here. They are here.
Uh,
Um, my daughter's on here. Here she is. She says hi.
Hey.
She remembers you from the Nancy Festival and stuff like that. So people are here and they're excited. And your village is showing up before, during, after. I know Narissa did a nice write up for you as well. How does it feel to have your friend be like, "Oh, girl, you did that, and I love it"? How does that feel?
It feels great. I have to say that it really is it's hard to to send your book out and ask people for reviews. And then of course it takes time, right? They have their own lives. I don't know what they're doing, why they can't sit down and read my book right away and tell me. But so it takes time, and that whole time you're sitting on tenterhooks and you're wondering, are they going to come back and say, oh my gosh, I hated this, what is this? And so I think Narissa, she sent me a message and she's like, oh my God, this was so good, I just loved it. And I felt like, almost like I just melted on the floor. Just relief, similarly, when I had one person who said to me, I'm so happy I like this. Sometimes it's a crapshoot. Like, I'm so happy it's so good. And I was like,
It's like,
okay.
don't send me this because I want to support you, right? I don't. Mm, yes, I completely understand that feeling. But that's the cool thing about surrounding yourself with talented people and honest people, because whatever feedback she gave you, you knew it was going to be out of love and out of
Yeah.
her own expertise, because she's an author as well and she's as meticulous as you are. So, it's really cool to have that kind of feedback coming from smart people who also love you. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that we were going to talk about, we said we were going to talk about motherhood, and there was a passage, I don't know if you have it up, that I wanted to talk about from the book. Did you have that up? If not, I can
This
find
is
it.
the section in the park. That's what you're talking about, right?
Oh, that was
Page.
one the park. Okay, so there's
Yeah.
another one. I must not have sent you that one, but this one is page 27 if you have it in front of you, and um, it starts with Aunt Marjorie would know what to do. Just that
Oh,
that
okay.
that little piece right there that ends with indefinitely. Because I think I
You want me
I
to read
mowed over
that?
your part.
Um, I can read the whole paragraph. Are you
Okay.
trying to avoid spoilers?
I am.
It's
See, that's why I was like, just stop right there. Just right there.
no, it's fine because this is pretty early in the book, and
Yeah.
just to set things up a little bit, Amaya, when she was 19, she got married, and she came with her, she had the baby, she got pregnant, she got married, she had the baby then she came to the US. Where did she have Taiwo? Anyway, she came to US and she had the baby in Trinidad, and then came to the US. So this is a flashback to right after they arrived. So Uncle Joe lived in the top half of a two-story brownstone flanked on either side by identical structures. I'd never lived so close to a neighbor before and was equally fascinated by the idea that I could hear their conversations through the wall, and horrified that they might misinterpret some of the noises they heard from the small bedroom into which Brian, Taiwo, and I had squeezed all of our belongings. Uncle Joe's wife, Aunt Camilla, fit us into the two bedrooms left vacant by their now adult son and daughter, and the four walls pressed against me constantly, not only because there was a mere foot of space around our bed, but because the windows were never opened, and I was ever aware that Taiwo was breathing the same air that had been circulating from nostril to nostril of the five adults who occupied the house. In those early days, I almost regretted my decision to flee the Caribbean. Before arriving, I had fantasized about freedom. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind had filled with the thoughts of anonymity, of blank pages, of putting one more step between me and my Jamaican past. But once Taiwo had been born, when I found my arms filled with a responsibility I could never shirk, fear had filled me so completely I had been almost paralyzed. I wanted to turn back, to return to Aunt Marjorie's garden. And Marjorie would know what to do with the tiny creature who had crawled out of my body and curled his fingers around my heart so tightly I was afraid one day it would disintegrate and I would have no more love to give to him. What I felt was so all encompassing. It was impossible to believe it would continue to bubble forth indefinitely. Impossible to imagine that the gush I felt when he cried, when his lips tugged on my nipples, when anyone else tried to hold him was endless. While I had buried details of my own experiences with love, one thing I knew was that love had boundaries. I knew that Aunt Marjorie would whisper the right words of assurance or boil the herbs that would stem the love flood so I could bear it. By the time Taiwo was born, I had stopped writing to Jamaica, had moved in with Brian, and had not left a forwarding address, effectively rendering the path back to Aunt Marjorie impossible. So, so I can't hear you. And I
So
got
that right
chills.
there,
And it's my own thing. But
yes.
whenever I read the parts about, how she feels about Taiwo, I get chills still because it takes me back to, being with my own children, being, when they're so young and so vulnerable, and all you want to do is just, hold them. And there are times now when I still want to like put them back in my womb when they're
It's like, "You
grown.
wanna go to the movies? No, no, I would like you to sit in the bed with me and watch Netflix, don't go anywhere." Yes, I that passage alone, so you know how when you get to a certain point in a novel and you say, "Okay, I'm not going to sleep." Like, this is the point where you say to yourself, "Well, this isn't gonna be a read on the, read on the train, read in between. No, I'm not just go ahead and say I'm not going to bed because I'm gonna finish this." That part just because I was a single mom when I started my parenthood. And all of those questions that you have, like, can I actually love somebody like this? Like, is there going to be enough? Right? Like, if you haven't felt that kind of love and that kind of nurturing and that kind of, attachment, can I do that for somebody else? And you're literally looking down at your stomach going, there's a person in there and I'm going to have like what? And then they come out and you're like, all right, well, I'm about to explode. My whole heart is exploding. And like she said disintegrating into thousands. I was like, yep. You feel like you're just going to come unglued because you just can't imagine loving a person that way. And then you get another one and you're like, good Lord, do I have more for this next person? It's like do it all over again. But what I loved was that you talked about how she wanted that connection and she started to have those kind of doubts, when you're doing so when you move. Any immigrant knows that feeling. They can't do this far from my family. They know more than I do. They have to know more than I do. So yeah, you're not the only one who gets chills reading that part. I didn't want to do this because so many characters are mentioned. I was like, we can't read the whole thing, but
No,
it was
it's
perfect.
okay. It's
It was
fine.
absolutely perfect. So, is there anything that you want to tell us? If you could give us, let's say you're in an elevator, one of us, and the book is in your purse. You've got 8 floors to go, and you're in the elevator with somebody, and her hum, you hear her hum "Brown Girl in the Ring" a little bit, and you're like, oh, I think this is something she would enjoy. Give me what you would tell her going down that elevator to make sure that she got on Amazon on September 19th so that it could be in her mailbox on 20th. What would you say to her?
Oh boy. Well, okay. So I've been working on the elevator pitch for like 5 years. So the story is at its heart an immigrant story, and it's the story about a mother, and it's a story about a woman who finds herself in her 40s and realizes she doesn't really know who she is. She has this experience on the very first chapter, like the third page, that sort of starts to make that really apparent to her that she doesn't know everything about who she is, and the memories start to unravel. She gets to a point where everything just triggers some sort of flashback, some sort of memory, and it all unravels backwards. And It's a it's a fast-paced story. It's a quick read. You're gonna love it. I'm not sure. I'm not good at the elevator pitch at
You got to
all.
get her in the elevator.
Are we on the which floor are we on now?
Look, I
But
think
no,
y'all are in the lobby at this
I
point,
love you. But she's still
but I'm
talking to
still
me
listening.
though. She is still talking to me. So
She is still
she's interested.
she
She's
is still
interested.
listening, and she is
But
putting it in her phone to make sure that she gets it on time. She is listening. And look, Narissa's Eva. Seriously.
what did she
Where
say?
are you going with these questions?
Yeah, but no, it's it's really about um finding yourself, and about motherhood and community and friendship, and at this, she's in her 40s, so a lot of women around that age kind of understand this time where your kids are grown, and then what's next for me now. Now I have this time to focus on myself, and oh my gosh, what well, she doesn't have time, but you get to this point where you're starting to think what's next for you as a person, as a human. So
Yes, the your 40s, I'm at the end of mine, which I hate to admit, but I am. These are telling me that I'm at the end. So I'm at the end of mine, and this year is the last year I have a kid in high school. So someone actually asked me, a family member asked me, because they know how I'm involved I am with kids. They're like, "So, what are you going to do with yourself when they're gone?" And I'm like, "What do you mean gone? What is?
where are they going? They're
Where are they
going in.
going? How does that work?" So, so,
I
and I
tell
could.
people,
Oh,
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I can't picture what my life would be like and how many other things would take up space in my brain, because right now I have their schedules and what they've eaten during the day and what, clothes they need for what particular event and where I have to be. But when that's not part of my day, there's so many other things that will either try to or will need to fill that time. So, yes, all of us in our 40s who have, that time, that even you're going to work, you still have that empty space with things and memories, and or you see a picture, or I know I saw an obituary for an uncle that I had never met, and
Mm,
I'd heard of him, and I had these, thoughts built in my head of what kind of person he was and all of these things, because of course living here, my mom had told me all about, it was her uncle, had told me all about him and everything like that. But, you know, all of those kinds of thoughts have been creeping up on me. Like, who am I? Who, because I don't have those full tight connections to um, I mean, there's just so many people that I know of that I don't know, and I picture myself making that trip that you all will get to hear about, but when you read the book. Oh, and Narissa says, uh, the woman in the elevator, tell her not to read it. Do it on a Friday night because you will not go to bed. You're not going to bed. That's it.
that's
That's
funny. Thank
it.
you. But I'll tell you, I say to people, you had 18 years to
Yeah.
prepare for them. Like when they came out of your womb, the clock started 18 years about they're going to be out the door, right? But you're going to be fine. I mean, I'm past my 40s. I'm not ashamed to say it. My 40s are behind
Well,
me.
we
Um,
would not know that if you didn't if you didn't tell us.
and my kids are grown and flown and flying. But you're doing so much, just like I am, and so those things will kind of start to fill the space. Work expands to fit the time allotted to it. I think that's Peter principles. Peter
Yes.
so said that. And so it's just a little different for Amaya, because Taiwo has special needs, so he's still at home with her. So she still has all those pressures, but I think maybe there's a biological thing that's happening that is causing her to really start to think about who she is as
Yes.
an individual. And so Yeah,
Well,
that's
I cannot wait for people, for everybody to get to read this book. First of all, let's go ahead and once again take a good look at this gorgeous cover. This is what is going to be on your bookshelf. Look at that, is beautiful. Like, it's got depth. It's going to look good next to all of your other favorites because let's be honest, with in the era of Instagram, our bookshelves need to look good. They got to look. They got to be
exactly.
Instagram worthy. This is the Instagram worthy cover. I
And
love it.
just
I love
just
it.
a plug for the bookstores. It looks great on a bookstore shelf as well. So, if
Yes,
you have a favorite bookstore, physical bookstore, and you go in there, even if you got your copy already, go in there and ask for it and insist that they get get a
and take a
copy.
picture next to it. Take a picture
Yeah.
next to it.
And
Make sure
send it
you
to me. Yeah.
tag.
Instagram.
Please make sure you tag
Tag me.
right with Carol.
Yeah,
So
for
my last question always is, can you see this as a movie? I can, or as a mini series. Can you see it on the screen? And
So
I'm
my
only going to ask for
agent
one.
claims
Who
that he can.
can you
So we'll
see?
see.
Who's going to play Amaya?
Oh my goodness, what a question.
Just give us a
I
little
do I'm really
idea.
bad with names of actresses. There's a woman who is in she maybe I can't say. I actually haven't
Mm.
really thought about it. Not me.
Well,
Can't act my
well,
way out of a paper bag, but
we'll be surprised. We'll be
I mean,
surprised. But you said your
yeah.
agent can see it.
Yes, he is definitely interested in getting it. That was actually his first thing. He's like, "Oh yeah, we get published, and then we'll work on the." For me, there's a lot of it that's very internal. We learn so much about Amaya through her own thoughts, and when she's so it's difficult for me to see how that would translate into a movie. But then that's why I'm not the one who has anything to do with that because I have read other books that are similar and that have become movies, and so who knows? Who knows? It could
Yeah, that's for
happen. It'll happen.
screenwriters figuring that stuff out.
We put it out into the
Yes,
ether,
we put
and
it out there.
we'll see what happens. But I'm just right now. I'm just focused on getting to September 19th, seeing it out there, having people read it. I'm going to be at the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival on the 10th of September. That's next Sunday. Oh my gosh. And then I'm having a launch in DC at Sankofa Video and
Oh,
Books on the
nice.
19th. So if you're in
Fantastic.
DC, if you're in New York, come see me at NYU. If you're in in DC, come see me there. I'm going to be in Charlottesville. I'm going to be in Fairfax. I'm going to be in Reston. I'm going to be hopefully in Atlanta. I'm working on something there as well.
They
So
have you everywhere. Well, I like these people. This is nice.
I'm getting there. You can say I like to talk, right? I like to talk about my
Well,
books. So I'm
listen,
excited to go anywhere and talk about it.
that I think it'll be so much fun to see it in people's hands. I think that is going to be really, really, really nice. So, last thing, we have about 5 minutes left. Does
Okay.
anybody who's on here, whether you know her or not, if you have a question, if you know Carol, you don't know Carol, you have a question that you want to ask that's not a spoiler, you've got a couple of minutes to do it. And I'm going to put your question at the bottom of the screen. You've seen some of the comments show up there. So if you have any questions, be about anything. I'm assuming it can be about character development. It could be your process. You've only got 5 minutes to get all of your burning questions out. Oh, Dr. Renee says you need to come to the Midwest. I feel like Chicago needs to be on your list. Like,
I would love to come to the Midwest. I
I
am
mean,
willing to
don't stop.
travel. If I know someone in so many places. So if I have somewhere to sleep, I'm ready to go. I'm good to
Look,
go.
look, Narissa's already come to see us out here, right? So I might have to find
Yeah,
some stores or something because,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
I've been
Chicago is a
making
great publishing mecca. It's a nice
okay.
place to be for this.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to do more travel to get to a wider reach for sure. Because as you said, it's not just about the Caribbean. It really is something that anyone can relate to, who's thought about home, who's left their
Yes.
mother's house,
Yes. Oh my
who's had a
goodness.
kid, there's so many things that you can connect to in the story that.
So we did end up with a question. What was the first inkling of the story and the character for you? Like, were you sitting at home or were you like, walking into your place of work and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Something about her made me think of this thing. What was the first inkling
The
of the
first
story?
So, actually what happened is that I did an MFA, and in one of my classes, we had to write a story based we had to look in a newspaper and find a newspaper article and write a story based on it. And so I did that, and that story involved Taiwo, who is Amaya's son. And in that story, he has like an interaction with his parents that leads him to have interactions with law enforcement, and his mom gets involved, and it was just a whole thing. And I never really did anything with that story because I got more interested in the relationship between him and his mom, and how protective she was and the lengths she would go to protect him. And so that sort of ballooned into me thinking about her. And then this vision came to me of them, and they were in this garden, and she was making a tea, and there was poison involved, which did not make it into the book. And so the whole idea of the garden started to, because there is a motif of gardens throughout the book. And so that's sort of how it kind of developed, and it just sort of snowballed from one idea to another, was how it came about.
So this is a fantastic question. Well, right in the middle here, we'll just say Seattle is a wonderful book lover city. Consider the West Coast. Listen, people want you on the road. You see this? You see
I
the impact you have made in
know.
57 minutes? They want you on the road. So we have another question. Which character would you consider making a sequel book to develop further and why? I'm very interested in this as well.
That's a good one. I mean, for me, the story is done. I don't see a sequel at all, but perhaps, we could learn more about Taiwo. I think he definitely has a journey. He is neurodiverse, and he is doing really well, really working to find his way in the world, and to he's a very protective, he's a great soul. And that's some of because of who he is, some of it drives some of the plot of what happens in the story. And so I would like to see his development. There's another character that I can't really mention without being a spoiler, whose life story is just kind of beginning in this book. And it would be interesting to see how that's developed, and what happened for them next, what decisions they make, because they're an adult, but in a very real way, very much a child, and still finding their way, and trying to figure out what they want to do. So
And
that
I
way
can,
that people are all over the place when they're young.
yes.
So
And I'm pretty confident I know who you're talking about. And I could see maybe not necessarily a sequel, but like a parallel story of what's happening at this time versus what's happening at this time. I totally see that. Or
and
during a flashback during a series that we would absolutely watch.
And because I do have some things on the cutting floor with respect to that character, and I know we're past time, but one of the things that I do in my writing is that I'll write scenes that I know are not going to end up in the book, but because I needed to get to know that character better, because that was one of the holdups on the book as well. I just couldn't understand their motivation, their backstory there, so I had to write it. And
Yes.
then it rings true in the rest of the book, because I now understand, even if like those details are not in the book, I understand them, and so their trajectory rings truer.
Well, this has been a fantastic talk. I mean, we
Thank
have talked a lot since the days of Google Hangouts. Like we have been doing this for a minute, but this I can honestly say is one of my favorites because this It's,
Thank you.
it's an adult novel. It touches all the things that were at the core of me really starting Soka Mom, that connection, those memories, those kinds of things, the motherhood aspect. And I absolutely love it. I was supposed to have my review out so I could give you all the link right now, but I will email it to the mailing list tomorrow. Make sure that you all are on the mailing list. You can also follow me on Instagram at Soka Mom. Please follow Carol on Instagram so you can get all of those updates about those reviews and that reminder to be on Amazon or wherever you get your
Wherever you get
books.
your books, it's everywhere.
And you can have it in your hands either on the 19th if you go into a store or on the 20th if you go online and
And
next
there's an
day.
ebook and an audiobook.
Oh, see, there were questions about Audible in the chat. So
It's an
yes.
ebook and an audio. I haven't heard the audio yet, so but I met with the person who's reading it. She's from Jamaica, and I'm hopeful that it'll go well. Thank you so much, Yvette. I really appreciate it.
So we
Yes, yes,
are
I
oh,
remember.
we have Dr. Renee is ordering the audio. She's going to be sitting there on the 19th like this, just
Waiting.
waiting for it to show up.
So please let me
So
know what it sounds like. I don't
oh, she's
know.
gonna let me know.
I
It's
thought that they would have sent it to me by now. So
well, see, that's kind of the cool thing about working with with another
well, it
publisher.
was
All
actually
the
the
details are
rights
not for
were
you.
bought. It's not even my publisher because
Ah,
somebody bought
okay.
the audio rights separately.
Oh,
So
see, we got to talk about that on a whole other, sometimes we do these talks about how to do and what to do. We will
yeah.
talk about, oh, we have another, oh, your crew is showing up for you. I
Oh my
love it
goodness.
so
Yes, it is. Thank
much.
you, ladies. I
This is
appreciate you. Love you.
fantastic. So, anybody who is watching this and you want to share it, because this has been a fantastic talk, if you want to share it, you feel free to do it. The replay will be up and live shortly. So, thank you all,
Thank you so much.
friends, new people. Thank you so much for joining us. Carol, do you have any last words for us?
No, enjoy your dinner, buy the book, follow me on Instagram at Write with Carol. You can get all the details that you need about where to purchase, and you can find out some little tidbits about the title, what it means, about, Great Falls, some different places that are involved in the book. So yeah, and enjoy it and let me know what you think.
See, now that could have been done in the elevator. See that we're still on the second floor.
Hey, there's
Good
the
night.
fish.
Right.
Good night.
Good
Good night.
night, everybody.
Thank you
Thank you
so
all
much.
so
It was
much.
great to see you. Bye bye.
Bye.